Hi, I'm Christine Diorio. I am the owner of the Diorio Family Law Group, and I'm a collaborative divorce attorney here in Tampa Bay. And I wanted to share to you today a little bit about my story so that you can understand why I chose to open my practice and do the work that we're doing here at our law practice. And it's a messy story. And the mess is important for me to share with you because the mess that I went through, the hard times that I went through, the struggle that I've had in my life is what gives me the tools today to help my clients go through their hard season. So I started my practice in family law because of what I went through in my own divorce. But before I can really talk about that, I have to tell you from the beginning where everything started for me. I am a child of divorce. So my parents got a divorce when I was about 10 years old. And it was back in the late 80s, and it was really hard. My dad struggled with alcohol, and my parents couldn't find their way through it without getting a divorce. And it was a really deep trauma for me. My mom was able to get basically full custody of us. We did see our dad every Sunday, but it was really painful for me as a child. And my mom did eventually remarry. I have a wonderful stepfather who really inspired me to be a lawyer. He's a judge. And my mom also worked in the court system. And so I grew up in the law. But as I went through my teenage years, got to college, went through college, always knowing I'd want to be an attorney. After college, unfortunately, my brother, he died of a drug overdose when he was 21. I was only 23. And this really sent me into a pretty dark place, a downward spiral of grief. And during that first year after his death, I actually made the decision to get married. I'm not sure that was the best time for me to make that choice, but I did. And I was really struggling with alcoholism at the time, and so was my first husband. So we were quite a pair. So we moved to Tallahassee for me to go to law school. And while I was there, I did sober up. I was able to quit drinking. We had 2 children while I was in law school. I actually took the bar exam, 8 months pregnant with my daughter. And then we moved back to my hometown in Gainesville, Florida, where I started my career as a prosecutor. But unfortunately, during that time, the marriage started to fall apart. And so we ended up beginning our divorce. And during that time, I unfortunately relapsed. And my husband at the time was struggling with his alcoholism. I was struggling with my alcoholism. We had 2 small children, and the divorce became extremely high conflict. And during that time, it ultimately culminated in being arrested for a DUI. I think it happened within 2 weeks of being promoted to the felony division as a prosecutor, about 3 years into my career. It was quite public, quite devastating. And I really believe that came out of how high conflict the divorce was, how awful it all was, all the stress that I was experiencing as a single mom and trying to get through my case. But by the grace of God, since the morning that I woke up on the floor of the jail, since that day, I've never taken another drink. I believe I'll be celebrating 16 years of sobriety this year. I'd love to say at this point in the story that everything came up roses, but I think that really was the beginning of the hardest part of the journey, was learning how to struggle through life, get over the grief of my brother, to work through that, to work through the grief of the marriage while we remained in litigation. My ex-husband and I think we both had 3 lawyers total and stayed in and out of different phases of litigation for 5 years, and it was not great. We did a decent job of keeping our kids from being in the middle of that, but there's no way they didn't absorb some of that toxicity and conflict. During that time, though, I was blessed enough to meet my husband that I'm married to today. We've celebrated 12 years of marriage. He came into my life at a time when I was getting sober and learning how to live my life. And he saw firsthand, coming in as my partner, the conflict that my divorce was causing and how hard it was on me. But we did get married during that time, and then we had another baby. So I got to experience what it's like to have a blended family. And during that time, we decided we would move to Tampa. And that is where my husband was working at the time. So my ex-husband and we had to go through a relocation case in order to get him to agree to move with us to Tampa. We were able to work through that process. And we took our 2 kids that we'd had together, we took them to dinner to let them know that we were going to move to Tampa as a family. And we decided right then and there. I don't know really what made us make this decision, but we both did it without really even talking about it. But we decided that we were going to be great co-parents and we were going to stop fighting. And it hasn't been easy. It hasn't always been perfect, but for the very most part, we have been able to transition from being high conflict to being great co-parents. That doesn't mean we're best friends. That doesn't mean we go on vacations together or any of that stuff. But he lived one street over from us. We shared Halloween. We shared all the football games and all the activities the kids were into. I can also share with you that he also got sober after our divorce. So for whatever reason, we didn't do it together, but we were able to do it separately and learn how to be amazing co-parents. And now those two kids, they were 1 and 3 when everything started with me and their dad when I left their dad. And now they are 18 and 20. And so I've literally raised the two of them on a parenting plan and went through a high conflict, high litigation scenario into learning how to be great co-parents. And so when it was time for me to think about opening my own law practice after the first part of my career, which I should tell you that after I had to leave my job as a prosecutor when I got my DUI, obviously, but I was blessed to be asked to go and work for the public defender's office there in Gainesville. And I did that for 5 years. And that was wonderful work that I did. Being able to share my story of redemption through my sobriety and helping other addicts in the jail, I found that really fulfilling. And I did a lot of jury trial work. But when we got to Tampa and it was time for me to decide what my next step was going to be, I felt a true calling to open my own family law practice so that I could share my experience, strength, and hope with other people facing the challenges of divorce. And those challenges are many. And I felt as a child of divorce, as a woman who struggled through her own divorce, that I had a unique position to share with my clients on a level that maybe not all divorce attorneys can do, which was really meet them in their struggle, meet them in the pain, and offer them some hope that there was a way through. Because I believe if you start off really amicable, then you're really lucky, but not everybody gets lucky enough to be in that position. Some people, it takes them a while to work through all of their feelings, like it did with my ex-husband, before that amicable or that amicability is even possible in the case. But I don't want the process of divorce to actually make that not possible for people, that the process becomes so contentious, so adversarial, so damaging that now these two individuals have no hope of having that moment that my ex-husband and I had where we decided to bury the hatchet and just knock off all the drama and start putting our kids first. Unfortunately, the process of divorce, when you have aggressive attorneys and people going to war with each other, will actually make that impossible. And so at our law office, what we try to do is provide a better way for families. And I'm open about my story, having overcome the grief of losing my brother, of having overcome my battle with alcoholism, and having overcome a high conflict divorce. I feel I am uniquely positioned to offer some hope to my clients that come to us and help them find a better way through. So if you're a parent who's facing divorce and you feel overwhelmed, I just want you to know that there is a way forward that protects your dignity, that puts your kids first, and offers you a sense of empowerment through the process. And that's what I'm here to do. That is my calling. That is why I opened this practice. That's what I do.